الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. All right. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Dope Muslim Women Podcast family. I hope you are doing well. I just want to welcome everyone back to the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast. We are now officially live. I always say it takes a couple of minutes for it to roll over to our platform. So we are now live on YouTube under the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast page. We are live under Facebook under the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast page, Twitter, X, and Instagram Live. So we are all live on all of those platforms. So as you guys come in, you guys know the routine. Give your salam so that we know that you're here, and share the podcast. So alhamdulillah, welcome back. It is season 7 of the Dope Muslim Woman Podcast. We have been running for 5 years, 7 seasons. So we have been really in this work, in these conversations. And this is really a podcast that has been created with honoring where we come from as Black Muslims here, kind of navigating these lands. And this is an issues-driven podcast. So a lot of times people get confused, but I always make it plain. We do discuss issues first, right? We bring the issues to the surface. We bring it from the dark to the light. In an effort so that we can, first of all, normalize uncomfortable conversations so that we can go deeper as what it would take to navigate our individual issues, to be better Muslims, to be better mothers, to be better fathers, to be better community members. So that is the purpose of this platform. I thank you guys. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Again, remember to share the podcast. I'm really honored, humbled. I have mixed feelings about this podcast. I was really in my emotions leading up to it, but it is called Violence at Our Doorsteps. So it is a heavy, heavy title, but I feel like I have some of the best. So I'm completely in a space of honor just to introduce who I have here on the podcast, because we are going to talk about some heavy things. I was talking to my mother earlier, and she was like, I've been avoiding this conversation. I've been avoiding the dialogue because it's traumatic when you're from the city of Philadelphia to discuss certain things, but it has to be done. And again, mashallah, I'm honored to introduce the best that the city has to offer, alhamdulillah. So I want to first and foremost say assalamu alaikum to all of my panelists.
Wa alaikum salam.
Such an honor. I'm so happy to say that everyone has been here before, so they're family, mashallah, some multiple times. So we're really happy. You can kind of search and find, everyone's individual podcast. But the first individual I wanted to introduce, mashallah, I'm so honored because I knew her since I was a little girl. And mashallah, the person she has become makes me incredibly proud and honored that I knew her since I was a little girl. But mashallah, a lot of people amongst the city of Philadelphia as well as nationwide know her as the Black Muslim, as the founder and CEO of the Black Muslim Leadership Council. She also works for the Mayor's Commission for Faith-Based Interfaith Affairs, and she does a variety of other things. She's involved in politics. She's always on the front line. She's been doing things for as long as I can remember to try to make the city of Philadelphia better. She's brought the Eid, and I remember she did all kinds of endeavors with like the Children's Museum, and just to make Islam very relevant for the city. She's been in front of a lot of initiatives. So it is my honor and privilege to welcome Salima Suswell to the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for such a warm introduction. And I'm so proud of you. Look at this. This podcast is like one of the dopest podcasts in the national Muslim community. And you have just blossomed into such an inspiration and leader for us all. So alhamdulillah, I'm proud of you as well and honored to be here.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out. It's my honor. And alhamdulillah, this brother, very, very busy. Again, honor. He may not remember me, but I remember him when I was a little bit younger in the community. Always been a leader. Mashallah, he is currently known as the resident imam of Masjid Allah in Philadelphia. He works for the Governor's Commission for African American Affairs. He's appointed for that position. He also works as the IT director for the city of Philadelphia. Again, a brother that's well known. You see him on news shows. You see him always, again, on the front lines. Every time something happens in the city, he's right there. And we're just very, very proud of what he's done with the Masjid Allah, and how he's brought some of the community back to life. So it's my honor and privilege to welcome Imam Idris to the show. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you very much for that warm welcome. And once again, I'm just going to echo what my sister Salima said, which is right. I'm honored to be here. Love what you're doing with this platform. We check it out quite often. You do handle and address some really hard-hitting topics, lots of thoughtful commentary, and we are all better because of what you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. It's my honor. And the next brother, he's like definitely family to the show. Mashallah, he's been on the show multiple times, including my live show. I want to say Imam Idris and the next brother has been at my live show in Philadelphia, but he is the deputy sheriff for the city of Philadelphia. Again, you guys have seen him on the platform. He does amazing things with his own news radio station and has always been on the front line in front of these conversations. And just someone, you know, we really want to reference when we start to talk about gun violence in the city of Philadelphia or anywhere across the country. So it is my honor to welcome back our brother and family member to the show, Brother Jihad Ahmed.
Assalamu alaikum. And you mentioned that you remember Salima when you were younger. You remember you.
Oh yeah, I do. I do remember you when I was younger.
Remember Ma'am Idris. Now you remember me when you were younger. Wait a minute. Are you the youngest one on the platform tonight?
I know. You know what? I just felt so much younger. I know Salima was like friends to my older sister.
No, Jihad, when we all met you, you were definitely an adult.
You're a grown man, exactly.
I remember being young.
Definitely preserved you, bro. Because you're definitely older than
Alhamdulillah. Okay, you guys.
Much success to you with your show, sister. I want to tell you that I remember when you started and we were having conversations, you know, with different platforms and different microphones you should use. And I'm just so proud of you and what you have done with your platform. Like Dope Muslim Woman podcast is definitely it's a movement within itself. And I love the topics that you talk about. I thought that I normally talk about topics that people don't want to talk about, but sister, stay on your page, get information.
Alhamdulillah. It's like I said, you helped me at the beginning, so I always pay homage. I appreciate you deeply for the work that you've done. So now we need to, you know, subhanAllah, so now we need to pivot. We do have a heavy conversation to have because I was actually in Atlanta with my family for Eid when I got the news. And we got the news directly because I have family members that were attending the Philadelphia Mosque on the day of Eid. Their celebrations where there were about 1,000 people in the park. And there was a very traumatic experience reported from family members who were fleeing for refuge as a result of a shooting that had occurred in Philadelphia. So I did want to just start right there because it has been in the news. I think there were recent postings about it. It's been on everyone's mind. Like I said, for us that grew up around the Philadelphia Mosque, for me, I was a little girl in that masjid. It was just hard. It was hard to watch the news. It was hard to hear the stories. It was just difficult, right? And I'm not going to lie. Some of us kind of like distance ourselves from the story just because it was so difficult. But I do think it's really necessary to have this conversation. And I've been also intrigued by other leaders that have came out and said different things we should or shouldn't do. And it's just been some really kind of interesting dialogue. But like I said, you guys are in the city and you guys work directly with the people. So I wanted to just start first and foremost and just ask, and whoever wants to grab this can grab it because I don't know who the best person is for this question. But what happened on that really frightful day of Eid at the Philadelphia Mosque?
I was there, so I'll go first if it's okay with you. At approximately 2:25, and how I know it was 2:25 because I was taking pictures. My stepson was riding a horse. And we took him off the horse. And as we took him off the horse, we were watching these two other brothers ride the horse, and I was laughing, and I said they look like the Lone Ranger and Tonto, because the two white horses, two very beautiful horses. And I snapped a picture at 2:28 of them. Right after that, you heard pat, 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 pat. You heard series of gunshots. And when I turned around, it was just a herd of people running every way. To the right, to the left, towards Girard Avenue, towards Lancaster Avenue, back towards the masjid, towards 47th Street. You had horses that were in the park at the time that were trying to be caught by their handler. Thank God they were well-trained horses. They didn't trample on anyone. They didn't knock the people that were on top of them. And at that point, you just had people coming towards you. So at that time, my wife wanted to run towards the direction of the shots because her teenager son was in that area. I stopped her and had to physically push her down on the ground and lay on top of her and told her, "Don't move, don't move." At that time, I stood behind a tree and was yelling out to many of the people that I seen running to just lay on the ground. And it reminded me of an active shooter. And in law enforcement, we're trained and taught the only people that should be running towards the threat is the individuals that are trained and the individuals that have weapons. Yeah. Yelling to the people, get behind the trees. People were diving on the ground. People were grabbing their children. It was a day that I don't think that I will ever forget. And just talking about it now brings back the memories, the trauma of what we all witnessed that was there in the park. After everything happened, well, while things were going on, you had police officers that just happened to not be there for the actual event, but they were doing more or less like writing tickets and some traffic control. And they were running around with their guns like this, looking for the individuals. You had security officers, paid security that was paid by the Philadelphia Masjid that were, from what I've seen, taking flight. Not running after anybody, but themselves trying to get safety. And this was just from my viewpoint. Other people that may have been there may have had a different viewpoint. This is just my viewpoint of watching children being dragged by their parents because they were trying to get out the way. Men and women were both running. It wasn't no heroes out there. I saw people running. I saw people taking cover, running on Girard Avenue, Lancaster Avenue. People were just looking for some way to just be able to get to a safe location.
SubhanAllah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that. I know it's difficult, but I do appreciate you sharing that. I'm going to bounce over to you, Selena, because I do think I may have heard the first kind of like official sort of statements or at least response maybe coming from you, at least just the social media, and obviously I follow you. But what was the response from some of the leaders, political leaders, those who work with the city of Philadelphia? What was that initial response after the news came of the incident?
I think definitely folks were just heartbroken. They were really, concerned. I got at least calls from at least 10 different elected officials, and their first concern was I okay, and was I there, and how is everyone okay? That those were like the kind of calls and text messages I received. People were just really, as much as we know that gun violence is happening in Philadelphia and in large cities like Philadelphia across the nation, I think that folks were really shocked that at an Eid celebration that is supposed to be peaceful at the end of our holy month of Ramadan, we are convening, and that someone had the audacity to be there with a military grade AR-15 firing over 30 shots in a crowd of hundreds, close to 1,000 people. You know, I have chills just saying that, and honestly listening to the testimony that Jihad gave, and so I wasn't there this year. Um, thankfully, I actually was on my way there, and my husband told me he was tired, so we went home. But I was there last year when there was a small scare and there was a stampede, and just people thought that there was gunfire, or I don't really know what happened, but there was some issue that took place last year that was scary enough, you know. This year there was, you know, an actual shooting, a mass shooting. You know, I had family members that were there, my nieces and nephews. You know, one of my nieces literally was very close to the person that got shot in the stomach. She saw this, you know, so, you know, people are traumatized. And, you know, I think the reaction from the political community and our neighbors and other of other faiths, and Imam Idris, I'm sure will speak to this, they were supportive. You know, I got calls from all over the nation. Honestly, I got calls from all over the nation, and then certain parts of the world, you know, within the days, you know, in the aftermath of what happened. And folks were really, really upset. I didn't talk a lot about the situation because, like you mentioned earlier, I was so upset that it took me like almost a week to emotionally process what happened. Like, what is the state of our ummah? What is the state of our community as African Americans? I couldn't really talk about it. Honestly, the first time I spoke about it was maybe the following weekend. And you know what? It was for well, Jihad knows this. It was for a podcast that was based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Wow.
That's how far this story reached. It was a international story.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's still really difficult, but I think that in large part, our mayor jumped right into action, our police commissioner jumped right into action, all of the elected officials across the city, they were really concerned and they jumped into action, and have supported the community around taking measures to make sure we're safe.
Okay, alhamdulillah. I appreciate that, Salima. Thank you for that. Imam Idris, so we have to state the obvious. I think everybody knows that this shooting was done by what we would call children, but 15, 16-year-olds, teenagers. And, you know, I think that has been jarring. You know, that has kind of compounded the trauma for many of us, because it's almost like what's happening, and then it's like, yo, what's happening with our kids, right? What's happening with the youth? And there's some interesting trends in Philadelphia. I know you are an imam there. I think you pay attention to a lot of the trends. You facilitate a lot of shahadas. So I'm just curious. I want to hear from you. I heard a lot of rumors and a lot of talks, and people have a lot to say, but I want to hear from you. What is really happening as far as some of the trends with the youth when it comes to violence, you know, as well as just maybe the influx of coming into Islam? I'm just curious because I've been hearing some rumors about that. So what can you clarify?
Yeah, well, so what I'll say is this, is that we have an influx of people coming to Islam, right?
Okay.
Some for the great reasons and for the right reasons, and there are others who are coming for other reasons. And what we are hearing, you know, on the street is that, you know, that there are some groups that, you know, part of their initiation into a gang is to take your shahada, right? This is coming from people that are reputable and are sharing this information with us, right? So part of what we do, and we've always done this, which is, you know, before we give shahadas, we ask first off if you're being coerced to do it. You know, if you're doing it for some other reason other than you just want to become Muslim and change your life, whatever it is. And then we go through, you know, just the basics of the deen really quickly, just to make sure that a person understands the commitment that they're undertaking, because it's not something to be played with or something to, you know, as a trend or anything, right? So that's part of the issue. But also the other part of it too is just, you know, years and years of neglect of our youth.
Yeah.
You can't, you know, underfund schools for decades and think that our youth are going to be okay. You can't, you know, have our youth grow up in poverty, that their parents don't have a way of upward mobility for decades, and think that the children are going to be okay. So so this is a symptom that is not a Philadelphia symptom. It's not a Philadelphia Muslim symptom. This is happening across the country, and in everywhere you see a people deprived of education, deprived of opportunity, and then you pump guns and drugs into their neighborhoods. This is what you see. This is a natural recipe. Um, so part of what we have to do is to offer options to those that want a better life and don't want to get caught up in this nonsense. But I just think that there's a heightened level of disregard for human life right now that I don't think we've seen in quite some time. This is at a different level, and it's almost cool to do stuff like this. Whereas in the past, a person wouldn't even think to do something like this at the Eid, no doubt. And then also with other people that call themselves Muslims. This is not a part of our religion at all. And so we have this concern now where we have a bunch of folks entering into the deen. They're not really, studying anything, learning anything mostly. And then it's a bad reflection on Muslims as a whole, right? But for me, I think the thing that made me the most upset and got me so angry, I spoke on it that day at Mass to the Law at Asr prayer, after Asr prayer, because I was so upset. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it right now. There are children who are at that Eid, and that's what Eid is going to mean to them for a long time. And that is what makes me the most upset.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, and I charge the men of the community, because some of us know who these people are. They're in our families. Your nephew or your son or whoever is hustling. They in the gangs, that they got weapons under the beds or in their closets, stuff like this. We don't say nothing. We don't do nothing. We turn a blind eye to it. And then we act shocked when they shoot up the block or whatever's going on, right? So I just really feel like families, but especially men, have to take inventory of who's in their family, what they're doing, and check this behavior. Because when we saw this stuff being trampled down or reduced in the past, it's because we had responsible men that stood up and check this kind of behavior. And so that was a challenge that I put out to my community that day, because it's just wholly unacceptable. Masjid should be, especially the Eid, it should be a time of peace, tranquility, safety, sanctuary. And if anybody breaks that, all bets are off. I'm sorry. I that's just it for me. I can't.
Yeah.
Like, nothing else matters. I'm sorry. Nothing else matters. So if we can't get that under control, then we ought to pack it up and go home. Seriously.
Right. I really appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that. Jihad, when I did some research about this, and I know you would know this as just being an officer, and they're saying that it's really alarming in Philadelphia amongst the teens, where they're doing these sort of almost military style, multiple gunmen at once in broad daylight shootings. That's becoming a trend. And there was a witness that reported to me, and again, I don't know if it's true or not, but someone that was there that was actually pretty close to the gunman at the time had said that it wasn't just this gunman. It was like there was that team of gunmen that was like waiting on the wings. And as soon as the shooting started, it was like almost like this rival, like we're in the middle of a third world country. So I'm asking you, like, is this really the trend of what is happening, where these young kids are in broad daylight, kind of multiple gunmen, almost execution style, and all black, and all of these sort of things that we wouldn't have thought that would be happening at our masjids and amongst our children?
Okay, let me tell you this. I didn't pray Eid prayer there. I prayed at another location, and Salima touched on it because her and I had in-depth conversations about what took place last year. Right. So I made it in my mind. I said, I didn't want to go to the Philadelphia Masjid. I just happened to go by there to just see my children, see them for E, give them some cash, and then step off. And we parked 2 blocks away. And I noticed all of the young guys, thobes on, the gutras around their head, the scarves. A lot of them had on these masks that cover their whole face and surgical masks. When I got out the car, I said to my wife, I said, no, too many of these young whippersnappers is out here. It was just wall to wall young people. I never seen so many young people before.
Yeah.
It was just unbelievable, the amount of young people. Now, you watch TV. We all watch TV. An AR. That's what the young man had strapped on him.
Okay.
The police officer that shot him twice in the arm and in the leg. God bless that police officer for who did her job and put her life out on the line to take down this individual. And I don't even consider him a young man anymore, because when he put that weapon on, he knew what he was doing. He wanted to cause mass pain, hurt, death to whomever. Let's just say he was after one brother. He didn't think about, oh, I might hit a little girl. I might hit a pregnant woman. I might hit an innocent bystander. He knew what he was doing. An AR, not a regular handgun. An AR will wipe a crowd of people out of the amount of bullets that it spits out per second. To hear that, to see that, to witness that, over 30 shots, it's just unbelievable. And like someone said earlier, may have been the imam, that's a person's first thought of their Eid. Look how many new shahadas that were out there innocently.
Right.
I was there with my wife. We just got married in October. This is our first Eid together as husband and wife. And this is what we had to see?
Right.
Sad.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Absolutely.
And to this date, I'll let you know this, there have been 88 homicides here in the city of Philadelphia as of last night, per the Philadelphia police commissioner told me to my face last night. 88 homicides so far. And we ain't even gotten to the summer. It hasn't even gotten hot yet.
So Salima, let me ask you, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Salima, let me ask you, because I've been thoughtful about this. I mean, you and I, we grew up in a similar community, and like Imam Idris was just kind of insinuating or stating, unheard of, right? Amongst like how we grew up, the community leaders, just like the response from the men. I'm just curious from your perspective as a Muslim woman who grew up in community, but also know, how expansive you are now. But like, what has really went wrong from your lens here?
That question is heavy, and honestly, again, I'm just reliving, the trauma of, and I wasn't even there, but I'm still so traumatized by, what happened last year, and then hearing about what happened this year. And, a couple of things I have to say is this, I don't know what has gone wrong. My Abu used to always say, my Abu, Rahimullah, he used to always say that with quantity, quality diminishes. And so back in the day when I was young, there weren't a whole, there wasn't nowhere near as many Muslims in the city as it is now, But I'll be honest with you, even back when in '96, don't date me. Even back in '96 when I was senior at Overbrook High School, there were Muslim gangs. I remember our elders coming to Overbrook to talk to kids it was like the Muslims versus Winfield or the Muslims versus 59th Street. And like people it was like this thing where, Muslims were tough and they wanted to be a part of this sort of gang activity. And something that I want to say is a few things, and I'm gonna try to be brief. This is not Islam. And like Imam Idris said, this was unheard of when we were young. You know, our Abus would have never allowed, back in the day, I always talk about how back in the day, growing up in Mujahideen, there was a system called Bay'ah. You had to have Bay'ah and you were a part of a community and there was accountability. If you were part of that community, then you couldn't get caught, you know, talking to the girl around the corner, or you couldn't get caught selling drugs or taking your kufi off, any of that, because you were going to get checked by any brother in that community, any sister in that community. Everybody was your parent. And that's how it was. That's how we grew up. We literally used to march up and down the streets of 60th Street saying, drug pusher, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide. You know, and those drug dealers knew they could not sell drugs in the vicinity, the blocks surrounding the masjid. There was a respect for Muslims. You know, they didn't talk to Muslims. They didn't try to talk to Muslim women. There was a respect that Muslims had. And I don't know what to say, but I think that as a community, we have to take some responsibility for the condition of our community. And at the same time that I say that, I also don't want this sort of narrative and this branding to take place where it's like, oh, Philly Muslims are involved in gun violence and involved in gangs. Because also, to the point that Imam Idris said, we're living in a city that is one of the largest and poorest cities in the nation. And in large, poor cities, you have poverty and the school to prison pipeline and disparities in education and healthcare and broken families and mental health issues and substance abuse issues and all of these things that contribute to, you know, violence and what's taking place in our communities. And Muslims are not exempt from that. Muslims, you know, are living in urban communities under some of the same socioeconomic conditions as these other, you know, groups of individuals who are either religious or non-religious at all. And so in a city like Philadelphia, where a large proportion of the community, of the population is Muslim, you're going to have, you know, Muslims who are involved in crime. It's just like, you know, there are Muslim countries that have prisons. And that means, you know, there are Muslims in those countries who are committing crimes. And so we're not going to say that Muslims are exempt from doing anything wrong, and that because we're Muslims, we have to be without flaw, and that, you know, our religion is a religion that is, you know, producing violence. We're not going to accept that either. But at the same time, as Muslims, we have to condemn this behavior. These people are not among us. They're not of us. They may be among us, but they are not of us. This is not the way of our people. We do not accept this. We condemn this wholeheartedly, and we are going to protect our people. That is what, you know, for me, the messaging should be.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that, especially that insight, just as it relates to how it was versus what is happening now. And I want to kind of piggyback off of the comment that Salima just made and push it to you, Imam Idris, and hopefully Jihad, you can chime in as well. But you mentioned something quite passionately as it relates to our men, right? And kind of like, you know, you're putting a call out to the men. I think Brother Jihad also mentioned that, you know, a lot of our brothers took flight, and, you know, we can't judge that. We weren't there. I mean, the situation was dire, but I am still curious about the state of our brothers, okay? Because as our sister Salima just mentioned, I remember that as well, where the brothers would patrol that whole block. No one could come up around the masjid, like, ever. Like, the way that it was just secured and taken care of. And if something popped off, there were brothers that were just ready and waiting. But things have really changed and shifted. And we're seeing that, the fallout of that. And I'm not trying to put it all on the brothers, but you guys are the leaders, right?
Right.
So, you know, as it relates to our men and the brothers that are kind of coming up now, I mean, have we lost courage? Have we, like, what would you say about that? No, go ahead.
I'll say a couple of things. So part of what makes me the way that I am, I was raised by a father who's a Vietnam vet, right?
Me too.
I came up with somewhat of a military type, you know, upbringing to a certain extent. And with that, I also, you know, took about 10 years of self-defense too, right? So, you know, so we were brought up with a certain level of security mindedness and a sense that, you know, at any given time, a man might have to step up and may have to risk his life to protect the community, period, right? And I remember as young as 15 years old, a sister was shot by a stray bullet at Masjid Isha back Germantown. And the very next morning, Imam Sutruddin Muhammad, I mean, may Allah bless his efforts, you know what I mean? Because he's still soldiering out there, got us together. It was about 30 of us. And we went throughout that community. Half of us weren't even armed. I didn't have no weapon or nothing. I was just like, listen, a sister got shot. This can't stand. It just can't stand. So we got to get out here and find out who did it and make them pay for it, period. Right? I mean, that's how things were back then. We didn't call the police or anything like that, right? And, you know, now we got all this sophistication now. We in with the police and we got all this. I mean, listen, I'm a responsible imam now, so I can't say certain things on the air, right? But the whole point is, though, is that there were men in the community who were dedicated to protecting the community, whatever it took. And people knew that. And I saw some things during that time period that I'm not going to speak on right now. But people took care of business. I'll just put it like that, right? And people knew you're not selling drugs around here. You want to take that far away from here. And you're not going to be around here robbing, stealing, killing in this area, right? And that's just what it is. Now, we don't necessarily have that type of that type of ilk in amongst us anymore. For some reason, you know, a lot of us have gotten more educated now and more, you know, more sophisticated, but never really built that level of dedication. And for real, I mean, I don't know. This is just the way I see it. Listen, like, we're going to be tested with it, and ultimately, we got babies out here. I got 2 daughters, and the reason why I work so hard in the community is because I want my daughters to grow up in a safe environment. They're proud to say that's my community, or the Muslim community in Philadelphia is XYZ, and they're proud to say they're Muslim, right? They're proud to be amongst people doing the right thing, people that are looked at as a positive add-on to the community, right? That's my hope for my children and for my family, right? And that's part of the thing that drives me. And if people are out there ruining that for everybody and making the environment unsafe for my babies, I got a problem with that. And there's nothing that I won't do legally to prevent that from happening or prevent that from being a problem. That's just what it is. Right. We got to have safety. You can't have anything else if you don't have safety. You can't have business. You can't have education. None of that matters if you don't have safety. And so I just think that, you know, we got to wake up. This is a wake up call. Yeah, right. And this is a wake up call, you know, for the community in general. And listen, I mean, the sisters have a part to play too, right? Because there are sisters who know their man or their uncle or whoever is out here doing whatever they got. I mean, a sister alerted us to the fact that a brother came into the masjid with a gun on his hip, right? Security went, pulled him to the side, escorted him out, right? So everybody has a part to play. So I'm not, you know, saying that, you know, this is just a man thing, but it's a thing where the community has to be safe. Everybody has a part to play. And I'm charging the men because it's mostly men out here that's shooting up these neighborhoods. You know, it's mostly, not saying all, but it's mostly. Right. You know, and typically it takes that masculine energy to check that masculine energy.
That part.
You know, can I just say one thing? And I know you probably have a question for Jihad, but just really quickly, I want to also say we can't only put it on the men. Mothers, where are you? Where are you when your children has an AR-15 in his bedroom? You understand? Because some of these households, there's a whole nother story around single parent families, but some of these kids, they live with their mother and not their father, you know, for whatever reason. And I will also say there was a woman who was arrested for shooting that day. It was a woman out there shooting.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, no, these women, get it together. Take care of your kids. Why don't you know that your children have military weapons?
Very powerful point. And I do think that some of the things that have contributed to that breakdown, and like I said, this isn't about blame, but it's just like our children have dealt with a lot of neglect. They are raising themselves, right? And there is a lot of enabling, which is something we're going to go into deep this season as well, from mothers to sons. That's an interesting dynamic within our community. So it is a lot to unpack there. So I appreciate you, Salima, for bringing that up. Jihad, what's your lens as it relates to the way forward as men and leaders in the community?
Well, just to chime in what the Imam said and what Sister Salima said, there's women too, because a lot of the women, if you're ever in Philadelphia or you go out to Oaks, PA, every other month there's a gun show. And when you go to the gun show, who do you see? You see a bunch of young men with young women. A lot of the women are purchasing these guns. It's called a straw purchase. They're purchasing the guns for these men to be able to get the guns. A lot of them have records. They can't get the guns. So who do? You get your girlfriend. And guess what? A lot of them are the Muslim girlfriends. They're getting the guns for the men. I applaud all of the work that the brothers from 60th Street do as far as securing that block, as far as securing that community. I'm either going to say I applaud the brothers and sisters of the Nation of Islam, because that mindset of being militant, that mindset of being conscious about security is how we prevent a lot of these things from happening. I said to the Imam of the Philadelphia Masjid, when they told me that they were going to have an event, a community day this past Saturday, I said, is it, I thought personally it was too soon, because I'm looking at it from a security point of view. To secure that parameter of that park, you got to have metal detectors at certain areas, and there's only one way in and one way out. So we have to be more security conscious. And I want to throw this in there. It's not related, but it very much is related, that when people vote and you vote people in office, you know, so those Muslims that don't believe in voting, you have to vote, because when you vote, we're able to vote for certain laws that require people not getting guns. And then we can vote for certain monies to be able to go to certain organizations, whereas though they're out on the ground doing a lot of the footwork to control the gun violence. But there's also a flip side to the lot of the nonprofits, because that's the thing now. Get yourself a nonprofit. What's our mission? To stop gun violence. But are they really stopping the gun violence? Let's look at Masjid Mujahideen. Let's look at the Nation of Islam, the brothers and the sisters. They did all of this stuff with no financial money coming in from the government. So when we start thinking about who gets to allocate the money, we got to make sure and hold our elected officials that, you know, who's getting this money and who's making sure that this money is going to the grassroots organization that really has a good plan for stopping the violence, or helping to stop some of the violence. Because in my opinion, we have to get back out there, because just looking at it right now, it looked like a black hole, and it's just going to get worse, and it's just going to get worse. Like, where does it end? Where does it stop? Everybody can't move out to the suburbs. Everybody can't move to another location. Like, I'm here in South Philly, you know, and the gang violence and initiation of, you know, this is the thing now with a lot of these young people. And one Imam was very courageous and spoke out. And Imam, alhamdulillah, he spoke about it tonight too. You just can't give shahada to people and send them on their way. You got it. When I took shahada about 30 years ago, you had like a buddy system. You had somebody to make sure that called you in the morning, woke you up for fajr. You had somebody who walked you through how to make wudu. I think that you have certain masjids here in the city of Philadelphia that are giving out mass shahadas. And what is the follow-up? Because this is what I heard that was on the street. Sometimes the street is honest, sometimes the street is not honest. That a lot of this stuff started at another masjid. And these people left that Eid celebration and came down to the Claire Muhammad celebration and shot up the park. I mean, I don't know how true that is. That could very much be true because you have masjids that are beefing with one another. Well, not maybe the masjids, but a lot of these young brothers having territory fights because you hustling on my corner, or you said something to me on IG. This is bad. This is really, really bad, and it's not just a Muslim thing. It's the African American youth today. We have to love our Black people more than they love themselves, because that individual, 15 years old, is strapped on that AR. And for those that don't know what an AR look like, look it up after the show. That's about mass destruction. That's about killing people. God help us.
The one thing I would disagree with Jihad is, I feel like whether we agree or not, I feel like Philadelphia Masjid made a conscious effort to reclaim their park. So too soon for some. I get it, but they're there every day, and to have a conscious.
What do you mean? I'm sorry, Imam Idris, I'm not following. You said they made a conscious effort to reclaim the park. What do you mean?
Yeah, because there was a shooting, right? They did a community day on Saturday, this past Saturday. Well, first off, they started with the previous weekend doing a security meeting,
Okay.
and I was part of a meeting there where the mayor came, and brought a host of folks there, to ensure that the Philadelphia Masjid and all of the communities, all Muslim communities, got the resources and support that they needed to secure our places of worship, right? So that was the first step. They went through the steps of being briefed on security, received some training and feedback from the different professional areas to tell them what they could be doing better, so forth and so on, right? And then behind that, stated that they wanted to have a community day. And I just feel like, if you're going to banish darkness, you got to shine light, right? And again, that's not for everybody on 2 weeks after or whatever. I get it, right? But if you're going to change the condition, people got to stand up and say, listen, we're not going nowhere, right? And they need to go somewhere. People shooting up the masjid or shooting up the Eid, they gotta go, right? And again, that's not an effort for everyone, but somebody has to do that. Somebody has to reclaim our spaces and make them safe again.
Okay, thank you for that. So I know we have to transition now, but I did want to just get a final point, because of course, like I said, you guys are community leaders there in Philadelphia, and I think people are wondering, like, what is the way forward or what's next as we're processing this. So Salima, is it okay if I start with you? Maybe just a final point. Is there hope? Is there something we can look forward to? Is there something we should be doing?
Absolutely. So again, Sister Sabria, I just want to say Jazakallah khair to you for even, facilitating this conversation and having us on. But I want to say, we spoke a lot about Philadelphia Masjid and the incident that took place there. And obviously that's timely because, it happened. So it's so fresh in our minds, but this is bigger than Philadelphia Masjid and the issue that took place on the day of Eid al-Fitr. The Black Muslim Leadership Council had partnered with the Philadelphia community of stakeholders before Eid, to establish what we're calling the Philadelphia Muslim Leadership Violence Prevention Task Force. There was a young man who was Muslim a couple of weeks before Ramadan started that was murdered, and the media recognized that there was a lot of Muslims outside of the hospital, and they started calling people like me. Elected officials were calling me, what is the Muslim community doing about the violence and the involvement of Muslim youth? So we had already started organizing leaders in the city who are experts in gun violence prevention, as well as imams. We had put together, one of the imams helped us to draft a statement that went out to all of the masajid. And we had also encouraged the imams to talk about the senseless gun violence during their khutbah for Eid al-Fitr. So it's something that we're working on. We're trying to pull together and unify as a community, because it's a citywide issue. It's not just an issue that's happening in one part of the city or at one masjid. And inshallah, through the work that gun violence and public safety is one of the top policy priorities for the Black Muslim Leadership Council. And if people don't know what the Black Muslim Leadership Council is, look us up. We're on all the social media platforms. Our website is blackmuslimleadership.org. Policy advocacy is one of our central focus for the organization. I literally had a conversation with the Biden administration just days ago to talk about the issue of gun violence in Philadelphia. And so we're advocating for the resources to support the unique needs of Muslims who are suffering from the impacts of gun violence and lack of public safety in our communities. And it's not going to happen overnight, but inshallah, our organization is taking charge, leading the charge and doing the work, on behalf of the community.
Alhamdulillah. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Salima. And I also put the link in there, you guys, so look that up. Final word, Jihad, way forward as a member of law enforcement as well.
Alhamdulillah. I think that, like the Imam said, darkness and bringing into light, the Muslim community of the Philadelphia Masjid, had a successful program last week. From what I was told, I was unable to attend it, and getting all of the people to come together and try to work through this, because, I think, like Salima said, it's not just a Muslim thing. So we have to be bold enough to reach out to the Enon Church or the Stronghold Baptist Church and the Masjid Mujahideen and other communities, because it's going to take everybody to make this work. There's not a one easy fix for this, because it's been going on for so long and it didn't happen overnight. So people have to come out of their masjid and come out of their churches, and they have to be willing to work together for the common cause of bringing some type of peace on our blocks where we live at, and definitely some peace where we reside and where we pray and we worship. And I think I just said it, we have to love Black people more than they love their own selves, because a young man, 15 years old, and a young girl with a gun in the park shooting, they don't love themselves. They do not love themselves. So we have to love them more than they love themselves.
And they are our children at the end of the day. We're talking
they are children, they are cousins. And like the Imam said, the guns is up under the beds. These parents, we have to go into their rooms. If the kids are smoking weed, we got to go in there and we got to get the weed. If your child got a lighter and a lighter fall out their pocket, they smoking weed. They ain't lighting candles. So you got to go into their room and you got to search them closets. And if they coming in the house with some Jordans and they ain't got no job and you didn't buy the Jordans, something's up. As parents, we cannot be afraid of our children. We cannot be afraid to take back our homes, and we definitely should not be afraid to take back our blocks. We just shouldn't.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Imam Idris, final word.
Well, first off, again, thank you for bringing us together for this really, really important conversation. We have a lot of these conversations in private amongst leaders, but it's good to sometimes have it in public so folks know that we are thinking about it, working on it, and bringing folks together to help address it. From my perspective, first off, both Salima and Jihad have said a lot of what needed to be said. So I will only focus on the spiritual aspect of it, which is there's a life after this life.
Yeah.
Right. People are, whatever you're doing right now is going to ruin this life for you, but it's also ruining your next life. Right. There's a sense of morality that has been lost in the people, that there's a penalty and a price for all of this stuff that you're doing. And whether you get caught, and sent to jail or die in these streets, there's a life after this life. And there's a God, and there's a judgment, and there's a penalty and a reward for everything you do. Right. And so I would just say, if my message out there to any young brothers out there listening right now, or sister out there with the guns, with the drugs, with the hustling and all the things going on, right? You have an opportunity to shift the trajectory of your life from this day forward. You put them guns down because it brings you nothing but death. You put the drugs down because it brings nothing but death and destruction, right? It is a curse to your life, this life and the next life.
Mm.
And you'll be a loser in both. Guaranteed. Because we've seen this thing, right? Most of us grew up in the 80s during the crack epidemic, right? We saw what happened to the people. We saw what happened to the families. We saw what happened to communities. We still see the death and destruction throughout our neighborhoods 40 years later is still there.
Right.
And that's where all the gentrification is happening right now because all of that took place. So now's the opportunity for these young people to change the trajectory of their lives and use Islam. If you come into Islam, Islam has been a way for us traditionally, for the African American community, to shift, to change, to salvage our lives, to salvage our communities, to save ourselves and our families. And you should take it as that opportunity. God has given you an opportunity. Don't blow it. Don't lose it, because you're gonna blow this life and the next. So
Well, I definitely appreciate. Yeah, no, I mean, we have to bring us back to that point, because at the end of the day, we are Muslims. We serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this life is very fleeting and temporary, and we're going to have to answer to Him. So that's the greater reminder here. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys taking the time out for, again, bringing probably more so what's happening behind the scenes a little bit to the public, because there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of concern and there's a lot of worry and there's even a lot of blame that's circulating right now as it relates to like what's happening. Why isn't anyone doing anything? So we definitely just appreciate you guys coming on and opening up the dialogue. And we know this is ongoing and this is a communal issue. Okay, just to be clear, we are all responsible. We all have a part to play in this. So mashallah, you guys wear a huge responsibility. You have a heavy hat because you do represent leadership, but we know that we all play a part here. So again, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. I appreciate you guys immensely. I pray that Allah blesses your work. May He allow it to be on the scale of good on the day when it really matters. And inshallah, we look forward to hearing more from you guys soon.
Inshallah.
Thank you for having us. Assalamu alaikum.
Take care. Assalamu alaikum. All right. Alhamdulillah. All right. Alhamdulillah. All right, Brother Jihad.
I'll leave the show.
Okay, Brother Jamal, hope you're ready. I want to see you come on screen if you can. Inshallah. If you can. Okay, so mashallah, thank you guys for tuning in. That was our first segment. So that was where we were really just kind of focusing on the relevant issue, the concern on many of our hearts. Like I said, I am from the city of Philadelphia. I grew up going to the Philadelphia Masjid. So I wanted to give some honor to that. The second part of our podcast now, we are going to transition and we're going to talk a little bit wider, right? Not just narrow into the incident. But the first guest that we have is Brother Jamal, which we're going to bring on. I'm going to properly introduce him, but we're going to talk to two additional guests, Brother Jamal and Brother Sadiq. And we just have a different lens as we talk about like how to really pivot this conversation and how to really move forward. So let me bring my first guest on, which is Brother Jamal, to the show.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Jamal. How are you?
I'm okay.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, so I know, Brother Jamal, you were sending me information when I was on screen, so I don't want to do you wrong. But, mashallah, I am really honored. I am really honored to welcome Brother Jamal Johnson to the show. He is, I want to say, the leader or CEO or facilitator of Stop the Killing. Am I correct? But you could correct me. It's a live show. Am I right with that?
Stop Killing Us.
Stop Killing Us, okay? And this is an organization that does what?
Well, actually, we've been out since 2017. We started out against the police brutality, and then we picked up the issue about the gun violence when it started escalating.
Yes, okay. And you're a resident of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yes, born and
have been your whole life. Okay, alhamdulillah, and a Marine veteran, a vet.
Right.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Well, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming to the Dope Muslim Woman podcast, and I appreciate your patience.
Shukran.
It's an honor. It's an honor to have you. I wanted to just get right into the conversation. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about some of the incidents that have been on our minds for a while. Obviously, the gun violence. If you're from Philly, you have a loved one, a family member, a friend that has been a victim to gun violence. You have someone who was really young that was shot. That is, I'm sure that is an absolute fact. I have many people I grew up with. They are no longer here as a result of drive-by shootings. I remember I had a childhood friend and she was a victim of a drive-by shooting, a beautiful young mother. May Allah have mercy on her soul, and just many, many others, many, many janazas as a result of gun violence in our city, within our community. And so I wanted to talk to someone like, I always like to talk to my elders, those who have been living longer than me and those who have been involved in this conversation, as well as could see the trends change over time, and being able to have this really thoughtful dialogue about kind of what's happening in the city. We're going to talk about Philadelphia, but we wanted to be more expansive than that. But there has been a surge of young people, Brother Jamal, just in the middle of the day, broad daylight, taking one another out. And it's been a huge issue that has, some would say, been unaddressed for a while. So I wanted to first get your perspective. This is what you do. This is what you work with. So what's your pulse on what's really happening as it relates to the current trends with gun violence?
Well, let me say, I heard the end of the segment you had earlier with Brother Jihad and some other people on there, and they were mentioning certain strategies that I guess they're being pursued. I've always had a problem with the lack of action by the Islamic community when it comes to gun violence.
Okay. So let's talk about it.
Okay. I know Brother Jihad. I don't know the other brother. But ever since I've been out there, I've been trying to get collaboration and cooperation from various groups, including the Muslim organizations, to try to be on the ground. My thing is community engagement.
Okay.
We're serving the youth, we're serving the trauma, but I don't believe we're serving community. We're not engaging our community. And the only way you can do that is you have to go to them. You have to be seen. You have to be visible. And that has been lacking on our streets for a long time, citywide. Now, there are people doing certain things in certain areas, of course, but that's not going to get it. This is a Philadelphia problem. So we have to work collectively to address it, I believe.
Can I ask a question? You said that we haven't engaged the community. Can you be more specific? What do you mean by that? Are you talking about interfaith? What do you mean?
On an Islamic level, okay, I'll speak.
Okay.
Cause we had so many janazas in the last 3 years of these young brothers mainly that are killing and that have been killed. And we have so many young brothers we know that are in the ranks that are doing the killing. But yet we have very minimal conversation about it. Even at janazas, we don't get down dirty about the fact that we know that we are killing us.
Right.
Then we go to the funeral or to the cemetery. Shootouts on the way to the cemetery. Okay, Muslim funerals, to the point where one cemetery doesn't even want to have Islamic funerals anymore because they're always getting shot up. So all of this going on prior to this year. What have the Islamic community done about it? I mean, I haven't seen anything. And I'm talking about as a whole. I'm not talking about one or two or three different mosques. I'm talking about the Islamic community in Philadelphia as a whole has not collectively come together with a strategy to attack this gun violence, despite the fact that our young brothers and sisters have been probably the main fatalities of it over the past 3 years, especially in 21, when we had the most homicides ever in the city of Philadelphia.
Okay, so I appreciate that. So you have been around for some decades, mashallah. And I'm assuming that you've seen certain trends, right? So when you say, or you give the feedback of we're not doing anything about this, was there a time when we were doing something about this and it shifted? Were we never doing something about it? What do you say about that?
I heard the mention of the Nation of Islam
Uh-huh.
earlier today. Back in the day, which is where I'm from, let's say the 70s,
Hmm.
okay, we had a real explosion of Islam in the city, 60s and 70s. I became Muslim around that time.
Right.
Brothers would be seen all over the streets, okay? Everywhere you turned, you saw Muslim brothers on the streets. If it wasn't a nation, it was the Sunni brothers. It was always brothers somewhere. Sisters could feel safe because they saw brothers outside the masjid or just walking around the communities. That's not happening like that anymore.
Why? I know that, but let me just ask why from your perspective, because we know that as a trend, but why?
I believe the reason why is because, unfortunately, those of us like myself who had ventured on, because I went into the military for a while, then I came
Okay.
back, we moved on and the gap was not filled. It wasn't passed down for whatever reason to the younger brothers, the Muslim brothers, to continue on what they saw us doing. So as a result, in addition to probably some of the extracurricular activities they got involved in, things got out of hand, which is where it's at now, which is why I've been shouting for us, including people my age, to come on back out. We can do all the backroom planning we want, but if people don't see a change, there is no change. If people don't see us doing something, we're doing nothing. And that's the way I feel. I hear about these meetings now with so-called Muslim leaders in the city of Philadelphia. I've not been invited, and that's okay. But what good are all these meetings if they're resulting in nothing on the street? And that's where I'm at with this. Where are all these meetings happening,
Mhm.
especially with the Muslims, and what have they come with the strategy that is presenting itself in the community? The Eid shooting should not have happened. This is not something we just come upon yesterday. We've been in this mess for years.
Mhm.
Why now are we giving attention to this? This should have been done. Astaghfirullah.
I hear the frustration, and I think most of us are pretty frustrated. And I think you heard the sentiment that's happening, but it's no every. I mean, there's no secret here that, as you mentioned, some type of ball was dropped, some type of baton wasn't passed. There was something that happened. I have my own theories because I represent the generation that I represent your children, right? That generation of who would be your kids. And I do think there was some interesting things that happened across these two generations where I saw growing up a more militant type, at least the communities I grew up in, type of model in Islam. And I definitely saw a lot of like consequences. Now, some of it was, a little wild. It was like the wild, wild west. But I will just say, like, with the influx of us like going to get our education, and then there were certain things that we saw modeled that I think we didn't want to repeat, so we moved away from it, and it just became this distance between the generations I think I saw, and so I just see like an extreme change between the generation that where you would come from and my generation. And you can see that trend. And I know we're really upset about it, but it's almost like, okay, like how do we repair? Because I will say that there are many people from my generation that actually do care because it's our children now that have the guns and that are at risk of being hurt. So, like, how do we repair this?
Well, see, one thing about myself and those who associate themselves with me, we're about action. We're about action, movement, doing things, being seen, not the continued dialogue of telling each other what we already know. We already
Okay.
know there's gun violence. We already know people are dying. We already know a lot of Muslim brothers are involved. We already know all this stuff. We don't need to talk to the choir. What we need to know is if you're willing to come out and get involved. And when it gets to that conversation, it's zip, it's zero, it's crickets.
But what does
Okay,
getting involved look like? I'm sorry, I'm just want to
okay.
like, what
I'll
does
give
getting
you. I'll give
involved look
you.
like?
You said you read some of what I've done over the years, so you know I get involved. And one thing is that I'll go way back. I did a hunger strike for about 30 days outside of City Hall. Why?
Oh,
Because Mayor Kinney refused to acknowledge a gun violence resolution that was presented to him by City Council to address our gun violence. He said, I'm not going to do anything with it. I don't even want to talk about it. So as a result of that, I held the hunger strike, but I also visited his home and the home of his girlfriend every weekend. And I protested outside his house. Why? Because I'm not going to let you watch our children get killed, have our representatives present to you strategies to do something about it, and you're saying you're not going to listen to it. Well, eventually he did come and talk to me, and we had conversation, and some things happened. Not
Okay.
enough for me. But during that time, Philadelphia knew I was out there. Muslims knew I was out there. Nobody came. Nobody supported. Very few. Very, very few. Now, I'll move on from there. I go to, or up until recently, went to every homicide site the next day after the homicide with posters protesting and requesting that communities get involved. Muslim communities, non-Muslim communities. I got very minimal support. Every year, up until last year, I did a march from Philly to DC to the Congressional Black Caucus to go down there and demand they tell us what they're doing, but also to encourage them to help us nationwide because this is happening all over the country, right? So we're saying, help us, tell us what you're doing. How much support did I get from the Muslim groups? Very minimal. I'm not here to slam the Muslims.
Okay.
I'm
Because I was
just
going to
sad.
say you seem kind of upset.
I'm very upset. I'm very
Okay.
upset.
Like with the community, though. I mean, you sound like you're. So I'm just
No,
I'm
no, no,
curious.
no. I'm upset with our community, our Black community,
Okay.
because I don't think we have done enough outcry. I don't think we have kicked in enough doors to say we're sick and tired of this happening on our streets. We pay taxes. We should be protected. And the people who are out there trying to protect us, they should be supported.
All right.
And that's not happening. If you've seen or heard about me, you know I hold the politicians accountable and I hold us accountable because we're not doing enough. Those are our children dying on the street. How can we expect people that don't look like us to care as much as we do about our children? But yet they don't see us out there protesting. They don't see us out there um, doing community patrols around our own community. I just completed in November with another group of brothers called Philly Truce. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. We
Mm-mm.
did a 77 night patrol of communities throughout Philadelphia. Those communities have been determined by the DA's office to have had at least 10 or more shootings since 2015. We went out every night, 10 to 4 a.m., and patrolled those communities. Prior to that, I spoke with so-called Muslim leaders, asked them to come on board because we were going to be in their areas anyway.
Mhm.
I got crickets. So I mean, what I'm expressing to you is my
Okay.
frustration.
I
And
understand.
so when the Eid shooting happened, needless to say, I was livid.
I understand. I do understand what you're saying, and and like I said, I can understand the frustration from we're all frustrated, but I can definitely understand the frustration of our parents and of like I said, you've done tremendous work, and I wanted to speak to you because I know everyone, you're this is your passion and you've been doing it for so long. Can I just ask, a final question here as it relates to the trends of the young people, because you've seen many generations grow up in this violence. Is there something different about what we're seeing now with this youth, with these?
I think the difference in the violence with these youth are they feel a sense of, um, for lack of a better word, ownership of our communities as opposed to realizing they're supposed to be guided by us. It's
Mm,
almost like they're leading us now, and as a result of that, how can they respect us if they're the ones leading us? And I totally agree with them. Case in point, if you have young men who are out here brandishing weapons, hanging on corners, shooting people at will, killing women, pregnant women, bystanders, and yet the repercussions are minimal from the community, then what do they got to worry about? And how can they respect the men of those communities
yeah,
if they don't see anybody holding them accountable? That
right.
is the difference. Back in the day when we had the gang wars, we still respected women. We still respected children. There was a sort of honor. I don't see that anymore.
Absolutely. Um, I agree 100%, 100%. Whereas they are definitely more entitled and they do think that they're running the show. There is zero respect. I work as a behavioral therapist with the young people, young children. I work in a lot of inner city schools. I have for many years, and I'm floored by just the total lack of respect and just the level of behaviors that we're seeing is just really alarming. And I'm talking about from 5-6 year olds. So these are going to be the same children picking up guns because there's like almost like a total dissonance from any sort of emotion or connection. They haven't properly bonded with their children. So now they have all kinds of like what we would call maladaptive behaviors. So when you get 15, 16, it's nothing to pull out a gun and just murder someone because you haven't operated in any type of like connection or empathy, or you haven't even bonded with another human being. And that's a lot of what's happening in a lot of these homes as a result and byproduct of generational stuff and generational targeting of us as a culture. And I do want to just say this because I know we're like, we got to get it together. Because we're responsible. Our community is responsible, but living in this society, we didn't ask to be here. And it's ever since we've been here as Black people, we've been targeted over and over strategically. So this could be the result, right? So that we can wipe one another out. And our children are doing that job. And so it has to be something, I know, brother, I want to, just if you could leave a final point on this, where we just understand not only that this is our responsibility, but we're under attack as a people. We've been under attack since we've been here. So it's like we're gonna allow their strategic targeting to like wipe us out. So I want to ask you your final point, just something that we can walk away with just as a collective group of people that would inspire us to want to do better, to want to like really get in the streets and not play any games when it comes to something so serious.
I guess my final word would be, if we want to find the enemy right now, we need to look in the mirror. Stop looking elsewhere. In that mirror is the beginning and the end of our problem right now. And until we own up to that, we're going to keep chasing our tails, and our kids are going to continue to kill and be killed on our streets. We have to get involved. We have to engage our communities. We have to be on the streets, and we have to do it collectively, not as one place in Philly or one masjid. We have to come together and collaborate so that we can get this thing under control.
I deeply appreciate you, Brother Jamal, and I deeply appreciate your work and the just the multitude of things that you have done as it relates to this issue. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you and he puts it on your scale of good. And then even if the whole world doesn't see it, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees it and it's something that wipes out and all of your sins or any wrongdoings. Ameen.
Inshallah.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Can you tell us a little bit about where people can tap in to stop killing us if they're like in the city and they want to get involved or they want to donate or whatever the case may have you?
Well, right now, I've been doing work with Philly Truce, and I would suggest people get involved with Philly Truce. They now are still doing Hug the Block, which is the nightly patrols. They're doing it mostly now in Germantown area at 7 p.m. In fact, they'll be out tomorrow at 7 p.m., Friday and Saturday. They can become a part of that whenever they want to, just be a part of the solution. Other than that, that's really where I'm focused at right now, trying to support them, try to get other people to come on out the house, get out the offices, get from behind the desk, come out, be seen, and let's love our whole community again, because I think that's the beginning of solving this problem.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. It's been my honor. It's been my honor to receive you. Again, thank you. Guys, I want you to make sure you tap in. Oh, Philly Truce. Did I say it wrong? Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Imam Idris. Philly Truce, not troops. Okay,
Right, Philly Truce.
And you said Hug the Block. I said that right?
Yes, that's
okay.
right.
All right. I appreciate you, brother. I hope that you have a wonderful night.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. All right, you guys, we have one more layer and then we'll be done for the night. We appreciate you for rocking with us. Mashallah, he is returning to the podcast, Brother Sadek. He was here for our podcast on Love Behind Bars. He is not from the city of Philadelphia. So like I said, we wanted to expand this conversation, and we will bring him on. But he did do 16 years in a penitentiary for, you know, crimes such as this, and he's transformed his life. And I wanted to really get some perspective from someone who's lived it and has seen it, and you know, really a more introspection into kind of what this looks like when you kind of turn it all around. So without further ado, I wanted to bring on my brother, Sadek. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you, brother?
Alhamdulillah. You can hear me good with this mic on?
You say, are you good?
I said, can you hear me good?
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. Alhamdulillah. Well, I wanted to welcome you back to the Dope Muslim Woman podcast show. MashaAllah, Brother Sadek, he was actually on our last podcast before he went on a Ramadan break called Love Behind Bars, which gave everyone had something to say about that podcast. And it was such an intriguing conversation. But I'm happy to have you back here to just add a final layer to this dialogue. I know you've been patiently waiting backstage and you've heard everything. So obviously we've been talking about Philadelphia, we've been talking about the issue, but now, I mean, and we've been hearing from a lot of adults, alhamdulillah, our leaders, which is very important. But I wanted to really understand the psychology now. I wanted to understand, like, you know, this experience that a lot of our youth are navigating when we talk about gun violence and we want them to stop being violent. I know you spoke candidly that you spent time in the penitentiary as a result of similar acts. Would that be fair? Okay. So could you help us understand what the psychology of a 15-year-old boy taking an AR to Eid celebration and letting out fire without any thought?
Music.
Okay.
Music. It's the music. It's the music.
Help me understand. Tell me.
The Quran says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن الناس من يشتري لهو الحديث ليضل عن سبيل الله بغير علم ويتخذها هزوا. But there are among men those who purchase idle tales without knowledge to mislead men from the path of Allah and throw ridicule on the path. You gotta understand, all the music that's been how can I say this, confirmed, you know, the record
out.
label, yeah, the record label got a I'm looking for the word,
an agenda.
Yes, they have an agenda, but like before anybody make a record, the record label got to approve of it before it's getting put out. And if you notice, the only records that's being approved and being put out is the ones when people putting guns on each other. You got to understand, you like the imam is only these people imam for Salat al-Jumu'ah. After they leave, they imam is these speakers and these people who proclaiming that they Muslim, but they rapping and they talking about spinning the block and all this other stuff. That's all they heard. Back in y'all time, back in y'all days, they wasn't doing no drill music like that. They wasn't rapping like that. You know what I'm saying? People wasn't even talking about nothing like that. But nowadays, that's what's going on right now. And you 15 years old, you know what I'm saying? Y'all saying they got gangs and all this other stuff. That's true. Because when I was in prison, they had brothers who just into this slum, don't know much at all, but still they had their baggage on their back from what they used to do before they became Muslim. And they thinking, they listening to these rappers, oh yeah, dude say he Muslim, I'm listening to him. And they just think that's what it is because these dudes saying that he's a Muslim and he rapping and they following them.
Ooh. So the music is really that powerful. Almost like it's the religion of the youth.
If you know the history of music and how music was created, the Shaitan made music. It's hadith about when he entered the culture, the dwellings of the sons of I think the tribe of Cain, if I'm not mistaken. You know, and he used to make instruments and tap on these instruments on one particular day every week. And to the point to where he started moving with that. You know what I'm saying? And started making fornicate and do all these other things. And to this day, every Saturday, you gotta. That's what's going on. Every Saturday to this day, you got a concert.
Ooh.
So it's the music.
I can feel you on that. So let me ask you this on a personal tip. Okay, share what you want to share. Don't share what you don't want to share. Sorry. What got you into the life? What pulled you in as a young guy? Because you were really young, right? Weren't you a teenager?
Yeah, it's just what got me in. I was young, and everybody I seen around me, they was getting money. You heard me? You know,
Okay.
I was born in '88. I'm 35, so you
Yeah.
got Bays and Vols. You know, people with hydraulic cars, people coming through with buku music. Then half of my family, you know what I'm saying, there was some big drug dealers and all this other stuff. And I wanted my own. You know what I'm saying? I wanted my own. Plus, you got to look at it. Then coming up at that age, you start smelling yourself and start getting a reputation for yourself and start recognizing women a lot more. So you want to impress and all this other stuff. So you
Okay.
want to be that one that step. So
Can I pause you? I just want to make sure I'm understanding because, you know, sometimes when you're slang sometimes, but so you're saying, no, you're fine. But you're saying that what really prompted you was that you wanted certain things, material things.
yeah.
Can I ask a personal question? Again, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but was poverty a part of your experience as a young person or
Poverty
no?
is my whole neighborhood, the whole
Okay.
city of
Yeah.
Baton Rouge.
Right.
That's just what it is. It's like you have no outlets out here.
Yeah.
You know, you go to a upper class neighborhood, you're not gonna see no liquor stores and all this stuff on the corner. They gotta drive out to this. Every corner got this over here though. You know, and all we knew was shoot dice, play with guns, and that's it, and sell drugs and do them. That's all we knew. Nobody come and stand in our community trying to talk to us. And then when they come talk to us, we can't relate to these people who coming out here. Man, who is you? I can't look up to you and see myself in you. You too old. You like what you out here for? So we not gonna listen to you.
Okay. What about the education system?
That's where you get your reputation up at. We go to school just to swag. People wasn't really learning in school like that.
That's where it kind of starts. Because I was reading a little bit of research when I was looking up what was happening in Philly, and they were saying like a lot of some of these beefs is happening in the schools. Like kids aren't really going to school for education, but they getting a rep, they having beefs. So that was the experience.
That's where it really started, because when you go to school, you're amongst a group of people and you want to stand out. And people nowadays doing whatever to stand out. And it's even worse now because when I was coming up, the only thing on the internet we had was Bebo and MySpace, but we wasn't really on it like that. But now you got the internet and people trying to go viral. They want a lot of followers, so they finna just do whatever. Yeah, I'm finna be known around the school for beating everybody up. I'm finna be known around the school pulling out a wad of money. You know, people want to be known in a setting of group of people, and it's like the ideal is to go to school and try to learn and push out. It ain't like that when people go there now. It's not like that.
So let me ask a question, Sadiq. So one of the things we heard from the panelists before was that, like, you know, when you're young and you got these guns and stuff, where are the parents? Like, the parents should know that the child is hiding a gun under the bed. Would you agree with that, or was it just easy with a parent? You know, like, how did y'all get away with this with parents in the home?
You think I was listening to that stuff? I'm like, come on, man. Like, you can't really blame the parent because a lot of times people don't know what their child doing. Like, you not finna find my gun, mama or daddy. You not finna find my gun. I'm not finna have it under my bed. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna duck it outside somewhere. So when I step out, I'm straight to it. I'm not finna put nothing in my room knowing it's subject to get searched by you. You not finna find it. And my people never knew everything I was doing on the streets. They never knew. I come back in with a smile like ain't nothing going on. The whole time a totally different person out there. That's what's probably going on in Philly. A lot of you can't blame them parents like that. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't know what their kids doing when they leave the doorstep. They don't know. You going over there to your cousin's house, but you don't know what really happens at your cousin's house. You going over there to your uncle's house, but you don't know what really happened at your uncle's house. Then when some transpire, you're gonna look at the parent like it's the way they raise them and all this other stuff. A woman can only do so much. A man can only do so much. You still got other influences out there in the streets that help shape this person to be who he is. So you can raise him up the best way you can. And it just depends on who he's around out there in these streets. There's only two things a human being gonna do. You're gonna influence that person, or that person is going to influence you.
Right. And we just mentioned that, like you said, it was a lot of poverty and what was surrounding the community. So it's almost like obviously parents probably were hustling and trying to survive.
See the situation?
Yeah. That's why I said the system is rigged. It's a setup. It's a setup. Like just how our communities are structured. Yeah.
They did a research. They did a research on 2 lab rats. They starved them for a little while. Then they threw a little piece of cheese in there, and they fought over that cheese. How you think the projects was formulated?
Yep.
They starve us. You heard me? Give us welfare. You know, take the men to prison and put the women on Section 8, and boom, there it is. And mess our mind up with all the drink over here, guns flowing in. We don't have no passport to go get these tools. Where you think they coming from? Where you think the drugs coming from? It's pressure upon the Black community, you know, and that's just what it is.
I really appreciate you saying that, because sometimes I do think we missed that part. Like I said, it's a targeting that's happening on a wider scale. You're right. How is an inner city impoverished community that has been set up with a project system getting all these freaking guns? How are they getting access to all of this? How are the drug dealers just thriving with all the police system that's set up in the community, right? So it's like there's definitely something at work and something at play. So I really appreciate that. So, okay, I want to hear this part because I think this is important. You was in the life, you was young, but you got caught up. You went to prison, right? That's the result, right? Death or prison?
That's the result. Or you gonna be dead.
That's either or.
It's either or. And there's so many young dudes dying over small stuff. Then they go on Instagram and gratify what they did to you. Like, for real. And it's sad, but it's hard though, because like you got to look at how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when a new revert comes to Islam, he sent them to somebody's house who been a Muslim and let them stay with each other for like 4 to 6 months so they can learn Islam. You got dudes taking their shahada, they don't even know what to say when you in Jalsa. They can't name all the positions we in. They don't know how to say the tashahud. They don't know nothing. All they know is I'm a Muslim. If I go to the Jumu'ah prayer, I ain't got to say nothing but we're banner like a hum, Ameen, and we Allahu Akbar. That's all they know. They don't know nothing. When I became Muslim, I didn't want to change. I didn't try to make myself change. I want to stop doing this. No, I started to change the more I read. The more I read, I became a Muslim the last 2 years of my sentence, and every day from sun up to sundown, I was reading. Before you know it, this stopped, that stopped, this stopped, that stopped. You know, so they gotta read. Them dudes don't know nothing.
I know, and so now I want to ask you this, okay? How does someone that's been in a life who became Muslim, because I'm going to just say this, Sadiq, you became Muslim in prison. Some may say that it's not that hard to focus and read all day because you in prison. Right. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, let's hear me out. Hear me out. But then you come out, you go back to your same community or hood or whatever the case may have you. How does a person stay out of that life that's constantly calling them? How does a person come into Islam and they got this life, they got their homeboys? What does it take?
That's hard.
It's hard,
like,
right?
If you that part right there, you gotta have strong faith. You know, your iman got to be at a certain level to withstand and see the things that's transpiring. Because when I came home, you know, a lot of my little partners, they were still doing the same thing. My iman was strong at this time. Plus, it was the whole month of Ramadan. So it was like, I felt like I couldn't fit in with them. So before you know it, I stopped hanging around. Like I say, it's either I'm going to influence you or you're going to influence me. And you're not finna influence me. I'm going to influence you. And if I see I can't influence you to become what I am and stand on what I stand on, it's no need for me to be around you. Because I know if I'm around you, eventually I'm going to start back doing what I used to do. So when
that takes discipline. That took discipline.
That part. And that's hard. Like, you got to look at it. You leaving a lifestyle to where you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You
Mhm.
thugging, you doing whatever into a lifestyle to where it's rules, regulations, and strict restrictions. That's a hard transition.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like you literally like making a 180. So it's like everybody who knew who you was, they still looking like at you like that same person. But here it is, you trying to present yourself in a different manner. Sometimes that don't work. Like I said last time, sometimes you just got to change the environment that made you who you is before you became Muslim in order for to live your new self in a new environment. Got to move out. Make hijrah.
Right. Right.
That's
Sometimes
the
that's
hard part.
all right. So for our young folks that's just surrounded by it, it's everywhere. They're young, they're becoming Muslim. Maybe some of them, Allah knows best, right? But maybe some of them really want a way out, but they surrounded by
Can't go
this.
nowhere. So they can't go nowhere. So what you seen what happened in Philly, that's the result.
Yeah.
That show when they got the slang, when I seen that, I'm like, man, how you slang iron at the head, man? Come on, man. That's unheard of. That's supposed to be straight peace. How you do that? Like, do you not know if you intentionally unalive your brother, you going straight to hell, and Allah will not talk about your sins and none of that? You going straight to hell? Do you not know that? That's why a lot of brothers enter Islam, because they know the rules and regulations when it comes down to how you treat your brother. I know one thing. I could put a brother in the back of the car with me right now. He not gonna blow my head off, because he do. You know one thing. You just done me a favor. Well, I'm going straight to, you know what I'm saying? But you know what you just did to yourself. Like, man, I ain't finna challenge that. And that's what we look for running the streets. Like that love you get in Islam and that brotherhood, you can't get it in the streets like that. But you get it in Islam. That's why a lot of people from the streets come into Islam, because it's like it's the same things, but it's done it correctly.
Because that's ultimately what you guys are seeking, right?
Peace.
I mean, not you guys, but people in that life. That's ultimately what you're seeking, right? Belonging.
You seek love. You seek love. Outside love, because when the inside love is corrupt and it's not correct, you're gonna look for it on the outside. And when you run into it on the outside, you run into like some of the same people who probably going through the same inside love that you didn't have, and they looking for it too. And it's all about who give it to you the best. And the best ones to give it to you is your brothers in Islam, because they genuinely love you, they genuinely check on you, they genuinely try to help you. But here it is in the streets, ain't no love. Even though we looking for it, ain't none. Because guess what? You will snake me when we get into a jam that we don't want to be in. It's a possibility you'll get on the stand and tell on me. You know, so it's like when you step out that door sill, it's fair ball game. It should be us Muslims be the first ones these dudes run into. And you gotta, let me tell you something, no disrespect to the older brothers, you know, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, and may Allah reward them for the efforts they put towards the community. But you can't be a certain age trying to go talk to these young dudes. You got to get somebody who around their age to go stop and talk to them.
Why?
Because if you it's like it's a relate. Like Allah sent prophets amongst all the nations, and the prophets was of these people. The only person that was not of the people is the prophet Lut alayhi salam. Every prophet, Moses, he was black. The people he was talking to was black. You had an adult prophet, you know what I'm saying? The people he was talking to was adult. So it's like you got to be able to relate to these dudes.
I understand that. That's a really powerful point. And are there not enough of us that are like that got our stuff together talking to the youth? Is that the issue?
Man, some of them scared.
Say that again?
Some of them scared.
What? Scared of what?
Scared of really going face to face and talk to these little dudes. See, they'll get behind this camera and get behind the microphone and try to make it in a broad. Nah, go pull up on them one-on-one. Go pull up on them on the spot where they be chilling at. Man, let me sit down and talk to y'all. Do that. Some people, they afraid to do it. They try to do it from a distance with this phone. You got to go talk to these dudes. Head up. Man, what's up with you? How you doing? Assalamu alaikum, brother. Sit down. You all right? You home? You straight? Come on, walk with me. Leadership. Give them a father figure role. Give them that. But just getting on this camera and getting behind the mic and trying to say it it ain't gonna get you nowhere. You gotta understand when you're dealing with human psychology, you got a thing when you talk to a group, they understand in a certain way. But you get more deeper with them when you go to them individual.
Yeah. So that's what it will take. And that's,
It
I think
don't
that's
take
the
that.
problem though, Sadiq. Like the people that I think they would respect, like you said, they're not doing it. They're not going and hollering at these young guys. I see some of the elders still doing it, and I'm not saying that they you know, they get some respect, but you're right, it would be really impactful if it was more relatable.
I'm gonna give you an example. You got Lil Durk. He's saying, he claiming he's
Oh yeah,
Muslim. He
right.
rap, but you rapping about drilling and all this. If Lil Durk was to stop doing what he doing and step down and go talk to them dudes, I guarantee you will see a big change in a lot of Muslim communities, because that is their imam. When the imam finished the salah at Salat al-Jumu'ah, that is their imam. They
Yeah.
pop on that dirt. You know,
Yeah.
and you got, I don't like to say these dudes' names, you know what I'm saying? Because
I understand.
you know, because that's backbiting, you know, but I'm gonna call a spade for spade. If he
No.
was to step down and go talk to them dudes, and a lot of them dudes look up to him, relate to him, you'll see a big change.
Ooh, subhanAllah. Okay, that's I really, I'm learning a lot. I'm like, I don't want this conversation to end, but we do have to wrap it up. But honestly, Sadiq, like I hear what you're saying. I think it's just very real. So what part can we all play? Like, what part can I play? What part can you play? What part can the people, like, what part can we play in this? Because we don't want, like you said, unheard of, come into the Eid, a shooting happens, or just anything. Like I said, I don't want to just pinpoint Philly, because I'm currently in Detroit. That's, you know, that's a wild city. I was in Atlanta. That's a wild city. Like, it can all be wild. It's all the wild, wild west, right? We all have the same collective issue. But what do you think? What's some insight as a brother that's kind of just been there, done that?
I'm gonna be honest with you. What you seeing in Philly, you know, we want Umar, we want community, so that's gonna be felt by all of us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a strong possibility about how things going now. It's gonna be kind of difficult to stop it, but you can slow that down.
Okay.
You know, if you like, as for like age groups, go speak to the ones who are of your age, and for the younger brothers, go find who they leader is in their group and try to talk to him and change his mind, because it's a possibility that that young dude have a Muslim in his circle that he looks up to and is getting influenced by that person. So find out who that person is, and then you influence that person and change that person's mind. You will change whoever else following that person, and you are slowly starting to see progress. Now, it's sad that that had to happen, but it's a good eye opener to let you know what's really going on with the young brothers. And alhamdulillah, it makes the ones who really feel for this stuff want to step up. I respect that. Step up.
Yeah.
But you really got to go face to face with these dudes. You got to talk to these dudes. But don't nobody talk to these dudes but the dudes who influence them putting a gun in their hand.
If someone said, get the ringleader.
There you go. In the 40 laws of power, you knock down the shepherd, the sheep will scatter. Find out who the shepherd is. There's only two things.
Oh, no. I just lost Sadiq. But he's back. He's back. All right. You back?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you were saying something powerful. You said when you said, get the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter. And then you were about to say something. I want you to finish it.
It's either you influence us or they influence you. You get that sheep, the shepherd, the sheep gonna scatter. And after that, you're gonna start to see a change, because whoever they following, that's who it is. Then he young, he don't know nothing. He was 16. That's young. He got music in one ear and a gangster Muslim in his other ear. What you expect? It's all about what we gonna do though to prevent that again, because man, that's a proud piece. That's supposed to bring the whole community together right
there. Yeah, absolutely. Just like Jamila said, sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better.
Man, that's so true. That's so true. With every difficulty comes relief.
Absolutely. And this is, like I said, an issue that's been going on for a while. Sometimes we've normalized it. We made it just a part of just being, you know, Black, living in the inner city, whatever the case may have you. But it's not okay that this is a part of our communal responsibility as Muslims. We're not just supposed to be going to Juma making salat. Like, we kind of got to move beyond that. We are supposed to be cleaning up our communities. There shouldn't be drugs on our blocks. There shouldn't be people that are hungry, that are our neighbors. And there shouldn't be, like we have to be the ones that are actually doing it. Like, Islam is supposed to be active. And I think we've moved a little far from that. We think Juma and Eid is cool. And then we must, like, that's enough. That's sufficient. And I think we've really have moved away from some of the grassroots struggle that I saw some of my parents doing. And like, they were in the streets.
Your podcast helps.
Well, I appreciate that.
Your part, like, you doing, people can only do their part.
Yeah.
This is your part. This is you. This what you doing right here. It'll inspire others. Be like, you know what? Let me go and step up.
Right.
This your part. You doing yours. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Alhamdulillah. May we all do ours, right? May we all do our part. You're right. I love that you said that, and I want to repeat it, where it's like, we all do what Allah has charged us to do. Allah has given each and every one of us some type of skill, some type of gift, some type of avenue that He has given you currently right now. It's a matter of using that in the way that Allah has commanded us to, because we're all, like I said, our days are numbered here. We're all gonna have to return to Allah. We got to answer for everything that we did. So we can't watch our children suffer, our community suffer, our elders be disrespected, our fall of leadership. We can't sit back and watch that happen and not use what Allah has given us to move this forward. So I definitely appreciate that reminder, Sadiq. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. I just want to say this, brother, because I'm very honest, an adult Muslim woman. So I will just say that sometimes I know people can't get past like your lingo and like the way that you are, right? No, I'm just going to be fair here, right? I'm be honest. But mashallah, like you are a blessing to this community. We need people like you. And when the first time I kind of interacted with you, even though, like I said, some people that can't, it's too opposing. It's too different from the status quo of what we say is like American Islam, right? But you represent like the work that needs to be done, and your insight, mashallah, I just want to say, is profound, right? As just a young Black Muslim girl, grew up from grassroots parents, try to go into inner city schools and do my part. I find your insight very profound. So I just want to continue to encourage you, Brother Sadiq, to do what you do. Continue to keep striving, continue to keep motivating, because I know there are people just like you, wherever you were, that listen to you. They don't listen to me or Brother so-and-so or Imam so-and-so. They listen to you. So I just say, like, keep moving forward, keep striving, brother, because we need you. This community needs you. So I just wanted to say that before you go.
The crazy part is I need y'all more, though.
I hear you. Alhamdulillah. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for rocking with me. I know it's been a long podcast, but obviously we had to give honor to this conversation. We want to just say thank you to Salima Suswell. We want to thank Jihad Ahmed and Imam Idris for your insight, for the hard work that you do. I've known you guys since I was kids, so I know the hard work that you do. So it will never be understated here on this platform. So I just deeply appreciate you guys, and I appreciate Brother Jamal. Brother Jamal is a longtime friend of my father, and I know the work that he's done many, many years, and like the respect for me to him is just profound. And of course, Brother Sadiq, you always answer the call. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for inspiring us. I just found your advice very, very, very profound and insightful. So thank you. May Allah bless you. And thank you to all the audience members. I love you guys radically. Thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sadiq. Okay, you guys. So next week we are coming back on with another podcast. It is called we are talking about Muslim women who have been banished from communities. So it's called The Banished Muslim Woman. So that's a whole layered conversation we're about to have next week. But in the meantime, we want you guys to get involved in your communities. Don't let the conversation stop here. You heard what the brother's advice is. Everybody just do your part. You don't have to do supernatural things outside of your own capacity. Just do your part. Do not let this conversation end here. Become active in your communities, care about the young people, listen to them, pull them aside, work in community, do your part, because we are all responsible. Thank you. May Allah bless you. Until next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam.